So your friend or family member has invited you out on a boat trip, or you have picked up your own boat and you want to learn and know everything, so when you go for your next drive, you know exactly what you're doing and where you're doing. Welcome back to another bloody episode today. It's a bit of a different episode. I'm just literally just going to explain the boat because I think a lot of people out there need to learn some boat stuff. So I'm gonna teach you guys everything that I know and have used and learned in the past years of boating. So let's go. The main objectives we are going to try and learn today are port side and starboard side and what they are, the three main bits of the boat, how to actually drive and maneuver the boat, the engine, the bilge pump, and overall just the boat in general. So before you go boating or your friend invites you out to drive his boat or something, you're going to want to know what port and starboard are. These are the two main important things really when you're driving a boat. Now port and starboard is pretty much a boater's left and right. I just want to mention that the water's really clear today, but anyways, it's pretty much a boater's left and right. So basically what that is it's left and right. But which one is which? Well, our starboard side is our right side and our port side is our left side. Now the way you can remember this, and the reason why this is really critical in boating, is because whenever you come in or out of a facility, so whether I'm exiting this canal and going out to the bay, I need to know which marker is which, so that you can indicate where you need to go through, where you need to come through, and all stuff like that. Now these markers for me will be located just up the beach when you exit the canal near that rock wall, and they're right there so that you can indicate. There's actually some on the rock wall and then some just a bit far ahead so that you can actually indicate. And this is what they mean. They indicate that there is, something there that you can enter, and so when it's dark or even when it's light, if you see the post, you can tell that you can enter through there or something. And when it's dark, they flash lights so you can see where exactly you are trying to go. Now that is port and starboard located. Now, we're going to label each three sides of the boat. Now these 3 points, which is kind of two, but there's just 2 in 1, are very, very critical. Not really, it's just cool to learn them and it's just good to know what you are. So if you're trying to mention it, you can actually, instead of just saying front and back of boat, you can say all the stuff. Alright, so here we go. Now the 3 main bits is the bow, the stern, and the duckboard. The duckboard isn't mainly a main bit, it's mainly just the bow and the stern, but the duckboard is just another thing to sort of learn because it's something that I use a lot. So now here's what they are. The bow is the front, the stern is the sort of halfway from back, and the duckboard is the right on the back where usually your ladder would be located. Now mine's quite small, but as you can see on the other boat here, there's quite a big duckboard. Now it's mainly when the boat sort of stops and then there's just this little extension here and it goes on to the end of the boat. Usually you have your ladder, your bait board, and other things like that on it. But anything from the driver's area forward, so you could even just say the windscreen forward is counted as a bow. Now the bow is the front of the boat, and so that's why you may have heard me say bow. I don't think I really say stuff like this in my episodes, but if you're going to go to the front of the boat and stand on the front of the boat, you can say I'm going to go stand on the bow, and hopefully other people know what you're saying. If not, you're going to be the best boat guy there. Front of the boat. The stern is pretty much the, I guess you could say, deck area here. The stern is pretty much where there's no driving section and it's just kind of the whole boat, you could say, where you would stand, hang out, fish, all that stuff. And then it goes to here until the end of the boat, like that one, and then you get the duckboard. Bow, stern, and duckboard. Now you really just need to know the bow and stern and driver's area, but bow and stern is the main bits you need for the whole boat design. Next bit is the motor. Now obviously you don't really need to know what motor is on a boat, but you may notice different ones and are just a bit curious. Now there are some tips for the motors here, but not many. This is just kind of an explanation. So as you can see, my motor is completely gone. It's almost like I don't have one. But on my old boat, which you guys wouldn't have seen, but you can see right here in this photo, my motor is completely visible, and you see a lot of boats like that, actually kind of most. As you can see, my neighbor over there, he has a showing motor. Now this is the difference between the two motors. As you can see, my motor's tucked away, and we call that an inboard motor. And then the motors that are showing, like in this photo, we call that an outboard motor. Now the two differences isn't really much. The reason why there's two is because sometimes the motor not showing just looks a bit cleaner, a bit better, but also it prevents petrol fumes from escaping when you're sitting at the back and, well, toxins coming into your body. When you have an outboard motor, the fumes get out more because the motor's just right there in front of you. But once you start driving, it's all good, so don't worry about that. But here's a tip for if you have an inboard motor, and this is a very good tip because it's actually a very dangerous tip. If you have an inboard motor like mine, you need to know what you're doing with it. Now, every inboard motor boat will have this. It's actually a legal thing pretty much. Every outboard motor boat will have a blower. Now what the blower does is any fumes that get into this whole engine here, you can see this whole section here is where my engine is, but you just can't see it. So that gets filled up with fumes, and eventually fumes will get stuck in there and build up like, I guess, like a little fuel unit. And basically why this is important is because if you don't blow out the fumes with the blower on your boat, every boat has it, or every inboard boat has it, then next time you try to start the boat, obviously you will create a spark and you could actually blow your motor. Or worst comes to worst, you can actually blow the motor up because the fumes and petrol and sparks don't mix together. So I'm not trying to scare you here, but all you got to do is just run that blower for a minute or so every time you're about to take the boat out, and you'll be all good. Don't worry about it. Now where is the blower? Well, here we go. This is the... Obviously every boat is different. Every boat's different. For me, my blower is located here, and it's quite self-explanatory. There is a fan with a little arrow. That means the fan's blowing and the fumes are coming out of the engine. That's what the arrow means. Now I'll go show you what it could look like from the other boat, because obviously, like I said, every switch is kind of different on a boat. It has the same sort of like, it's kind of like a sibling switch. What that means is, that doesn't mean anything. I just made that up. It's basically like, it looks similar. It looks similar to the other ones, but it's a little bit different. So I'll go show you what it could look like in that other boat, because that boat should have it because it's an inboard motor. As you can see, this one actually says blower, which is pretty good. So your boat will either have some sort of fan symbol, and if it's a fan symbol, give that a click. If it doesn't work, just click it off and try a different switch. But it will probably either say, like this one, it will probably say blower or have a fan icon. And these ones do have icons, but they're very hard to see. As you can see, this does have the same icon. It's very hard to see, but it's the exact same icon, and it says blower, so that gives you a pretty good thing. Now, I think I listed this, and I should have, because it is a good thing. The bilge pump. What is a bilge pump? Well, it's what pretty much takes any water that comes into the boat out of the boat, so that you don't get water in your boat and it gets more heavy and, well, could eventually sink, but that shouldn't happen. But now bilge pump holes are located everywhere throughout your boat. I actually have quite a few. Now I have one under here where in the cabin there's this little hole here. You see that? That's a bilge pump. Now that isn't the bilge pump, that's just a hole that goes to the bilge pump. So any water that comes into here from you or something will get flown through here, drained out here, and it actually runs all the way here. It runs all the way from there into here. As you can see, mine is very full. And also any rainwater that comes down falls into here in the stern, and it fills this up. Now, as you can see, that's a lot of water in the boat right now. I've also got a hole here, so when you clean the deck, water goes into here and water goes into here. Now, you want to eventually drain this out. I should have drained this out a couple of days ago actually, but mine's super full. Let's drain it out. Now that I put the batteries on, just put the bilge on, and as you can see, all this water here is flowing through here and coming out of the boat. And now what you can usually do is, this is what I do, I always have the bilge pump on and the blower, and that blows all the fumes out and it empties the boat all in once. It's just a bit of a multitask. That's just like a little tip, not more so anything about the boat. Now it's time for the pretty much main bit of the boat. Without this, you've got no driving boat, so let's get to it. Now this bit right here that I'm going to mention is the driving area. This is pretty critical to a boat. Without this, you've got no boat that's going to work, so I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about the driving area. Usually when you sit down in your boat, it's pretty good. But you see all these switches, you don't really know what they mean. So I'm gonna label all of them for you. The blower, which we've already gone through. The bilge pump, which we've already gone through. This one's pretty self-explanatory. The horn. The lights, these are the lights. Now anything with like sort of a light bulb looking thing will be a light switch. This right here, we're gonna get to that later. This here, I actually have no idea what this is. I'm sorry, I can't give you an explanation for that. Winch. Now winch is the anchor. Now I'm gonna give you an anchor run in a couple minutes because that's pretty good as well. But this right here is the sounder. Every main sort of newer speedboat, I guess you say sort of like up class speedboat, and even tinnies and any kind of boat nowadays has a sounder. Now what is a sounder? Well, the bilge pump's done. A sounder is this thing right here. Now basically what happens is when you're in the water it's a bit better. But you may have seen me using it in my videos. You turn it on, you get it all ready, and it tells you the depth of how deep the water is so that you can find, you know, hot fishing holes better, you can find like reef better, and it also can highlight fish movement, so it's pretty good. So all you gotta do is just usually flick the switch on. Some of them just run automatically, like once you turn it on, like the whole boat on. But if you need to flick that switch, this is the sounder now on. Just turn this on and load up your sounder and it will start telling you the depth of the water. When you usually sit down in your boat, it's a lot of, now there's a lot of things on the boat, like all these things, and you don't know what they mean. So I'm gonna run them down for you. Right here, kind of self-explanatory again, is your fuel tank. Obviously the boat has to be actually engined on and the engine has to be running, but it'll just tell you how much fuel there is. Oil, same thing, just how much oil you've got on the boat. RPM, now this is a little bit more tricky. When I first started boating, I had no idea what that was. Revs per minute, sorry. Revs per minute, basically what that means is how many revs you're going per minute. This isn't really like so important to know. It's more so just there just to sort of know how many revs you're doing per minute. But yeah, that's what it means. So the more revs you do, the higher up the thing goes. Your speedo. Now most boats actually run in miles per hour. And as you can see, all these blue things here, that is the miles an hour transferred to the kilometers. So as you can see, 35, oh, we'll go here. 40 miles an hour is 60 kilometers an hour. So most boats run in miles for some reason, but it'll always have some sort of other explanation. So that's your speed gauge for how fast you're going. Temp, now temp, this is the temp of the engine, because if the engine gets too hot from you, like obviously running it too long or whatever, most boats, like even cars, older cars, you couldn't really just let them sit there for a while, otherwise the temp would go up. I have an old F100 that does the exact same thing, but newer cars and newer boats, the engine's, you know, a lot better, so the temp doesn't run up. So you don't really have to focus. I've never focused on the temp at all when I'm driving. I never see it going up or down. I don't notice it. But that's just what it is, you know, so you know it's the temp of the engine. So if the engine gets a little bit too hot, it'll overheat and most likely shut off. But that's what it is. Volts with a little battery sign. That is how many volts your batteries are on. This is pretty good to know, because if you get 10 or under, you need to go charge those batteries. You need to. It's pretty critical too. Otherwise, you know, without no proper battery, even if you're in 11 volts under, you need to charge them, because without a good running battery, you're not going to get very far. And batteries do usually charge, like in cars, they charge as you drive. My ones don't for some reason, but they should do. And the lucky last one, the trim. The trim is the engine. So when you lower the engine by this button here, or it should be located somewhere. I'll go show you on the other boat. That's a bit more of like, you know, a fancier cruise boat, but there should be something related to this and all this on the other boat, so you get to know. But the trim basically tells you how much the engine is down and up. You need it fully down so that you can get the best driving. And when you're going in shallow waters, you want to trim it up so that you don't hit the sand. But when you're in deep waters, all that, trim it all the way down. Every boat has an accelerator here, mainly on the right hand side. Now when you're driving and you're trying to push it into gear, you can't, mainly on some boat. Most speedboats you can't. I know for mine I can't, my other boat I couldn't. For main cruiser boats like that, which you probably wouldn't be driving, especially if you're a beginner, they kind of just have auto acceleration. But anyways, So right here, to change it and put it into gear, there's this little button here. Now it's located, you know, somewhere different, like what I said with the trim. It's located somewhere different, but it'll be somewhere here on this accelerator stick. So find your big sort of clicky button, and all you've got to do is when you want to go from neutral, and as you can see, my boat actually labels neutral as well. Forward, neutral, and reverse. Now when you're driving the boat, if you're going near someone or near something and you don't want the propellers to be moving, you just click it into neutral. And basically what that does is the boat can still like maneuver from the wind and the tide and the waves and the wake and all that, but the engine is still on, but it's not, it's idling. It's what we call idling in a car, anything. It's forward, when you want to go into forward or even reverse, when it's in neutral, it clicks. That way you can't accidentally knock it when it's in neutral, because sometimes neutral is a pretty important thing to have the boat in. Like what I said, if you're picking someone up or you're near someone, you can just always drop it in neutral. So now, when you're trying to go forward, you can't just push it. You've got to click this button in. It's not hard at all. Just click it in, and then you can push forward and go forward. I'm not going to do it because the boat's off and the engine's up, but you get the idea. So when you want to go forward or back, click this button in, then push the accelerator forward, or click it in, then push it backwards to go reverse. But that's pretty much all you need to know about it. And then the driving is just simple, pretty self-explanatory. You know, you just drive with the steering wheel, all that. The anchor, also a pretty critical thing. Everything on a boat is pretty much critical, because if you want to stay in one spot, you drop the anchor, it hooks onto something, and you can stay there. Now the anchor is the winch. As you can see, mine's stuck, and I wanted to demonstrate this. If your anchor's ever stuck and you're pushing down the button but it's not going down, and this is all you got to do, you've just got to go to the bow and knock the anchor off a little bit, and then you can start pulling it down for the rest.